Have you visited github.com lately? When you go there, you will find this beautifully designed landing page. But what stands out is that this top hero section here is kind of fading away and sliding behind this editor screenshot. And this is done with a whole lot of JavaScript. But what if I told you that you can achieve a similar effect with modern CSS today? Here on the right side, I have a quick landing page that isn't as pretty, but it has a similar layout. So we have here an overall hero container, which comes with the class hero container. Then we have this hero text section here on top. And then I have here a placeholder image that comes with the class hero image. Let's start by tweaking our hero text a little bit so that it stays on screen when we're scrolling down. To do that, we can go into our hero text class and we can apply position sticky to this element. When we now scroll down, we'll see, well, look at this. It is already sticking here when we scroll down. But let's give it some air first of all. So let's go with 1rem here. So this already looks a little bit better. And when we now scroll down, you see that, well, it's not quite right yet. Position sticky in this case creates a new stacking context, which means that it's kind of sitting above this hero image. And usually when you use position sticky, this is exactly what you want. To make our hero text going under a hero image, we need to apply a stacking context to the hero image as well. And I like to do that with isolation isolate. You could also set position relative and define a z-index other than auto. But for these kind of cases, isolation isolate is a nifty one-liner, and it is pretty much there to create a new stacking context. When we now check the demo site, this is already looking pretty good. So we can go ahead and add some scroll-driven CSS animations. And as a first step, we have to define what our animation should be. And for that, we can use good old CSS keyframes. This fade out animation here will animate an element from opacity 1 and scale 1 down to opacity 0 and scale 0.5. Let's apply it to our hero text. Usually when you're using keyframe animations, you would go into your selector and you would define the animation property. So here we define that we want to use the fade out keyframe animation. It should have a duration of 1. We want to have a linear easing function, and then we want to run it in a loop by setting infinite. When you now look to the right, you already discover that our keyframe animation is working and we have a little fade out party going there. This animation now is time-based though. So let's remove the 1 second and the infinite from our animation declaration. So now our animation party is over here, but let's bring in a scroll progress timeline. The new animation timeline CSS property lets us control what is kind of progressing our keyframe animations. The default value of animation timeline is usually auto, which means when we now bring in here another duration, let's say 3 seconds, our animation will be time-based. And we see here that this keyframe animation was applied once and it was running for 3 seconds. To make our animation scroll-based, we can remove the 3 seconds and we can bring in the new CSS function scroll. And scroll will now take the scroll progress of the nearest scroll container and will apply it to our keyframe animation. So when we now scroll down here, you see that this is already looking pretty good. But this approach has a major downside. When we look at this HTML document, there is not a lot of content in there. And when we now add additional content to it, so let's go here and let's just double all the lorem ipsum. So we now have a way longer HTML document here. You see here that the animation isn't progressing as much. Because by using the scroll function, the progress of the nearest scroll container will control our scroll-driven animation. So this means that a scroll progress timeline with the scroll function is great for, well, showing scroll progress. It's not actually what we need here right now. Luckily, scroll-driven CSS animations have another timeline for this use case, namely view progress timelines. The new CSS view function doesn't consider the scroll progress of the surrounding scroll container, but rather the visual progress of the element inside of the scroller. Let's look at the tool provided by the Chrome DevRel team to understand how view progress timelines work. Scroll-driven animations .style provides many examples when it comes to, well, scroll-driven animations, but it also provides this tool to understand and configure view progress timelines. In the middle here, we have a scroll container. Then we have this element here that we want to animate with our scroll-driven animation. I won't cover everything that you can do here because this is a video by itself, but the thing to understand is that view progress timelines lets you animate elements depending on their position and visibility inside of a scroll container. And everything is depending on a specified animation range. In this example right now, animation range is set to cover 0 and cover 100%, which means that the view progress timeline starts growing, starting at 0 when the element is entering the scroll container, and it's reaching 100% when the element is leaving the container again. That's not really helpful for our case though. For our fade-out animation to work, we want to animate our hero text whenever it is leaving the scroll container. So when we change the animation range to exit 0% and exit 100%, we can now see that the animation will progress once the element is leaving the scroll container, and then it will be fully applied once this element is out of the scroller. Let's bring this animation range into our demo application. We can add it to our hero text, and then we see that it doesn't look like it's working, isn't it? But actually it is. When we go into the CSS that is styling this preview box here and add a little bit of opacity here so that it shines through, we can go back and we can see we can scroll down, and now when the hero text is leaving the scroll container, our scroll-driven animation is applied. So when we remove our sticky positioning, everything should work as expected. And indeed, it does. But how can we make it work then with our sticky positioning? When we use the view function, we make the view progress timeline depending on the element itself. But we can also make it depending on other elements. So when we go into our hero container that is wrapping our hero text and hero image, we can specify a view timeline name and specify a named view progress timeline. And we can then use this progress timeline to animate our hero text element. So let's see if it works. When we now scroll around, we see that the hero text element starts fading away once the container wrapping the hero text and the hero image is leaving the scroll container. And this is all just CSS. So let's get rid of our transparent background here. And when we now scroll around, everything is butter smooth, and I'm super excited about it. There are two more things that I want to add before we wrap it up. The first thing is that whenever you're adding animations or unexpected movements, you should be a good web citizen and allow people to opt out, because some people feel motion sickness or dizziness when there's unexpected movement. So we can move our scroll-driven animation code and move it into a preverse reduced motion media query. So when people have no preference, we will animate. And if people prefer reduced motion, we will not apply the CSS. And secondly, scroll-driven animations are right now a Chromium-only thing. Firefox has it behind the flag, and Safari at least is planning to implement it. So we have to feature detect if animation range or scroll-driven animations are actually supported by the browser. If this browser support isn't good enough for you, I totally get that. But I think, first of all, Chromium has now an overall market share of 70%, and we can definitely treat this little animation effect as progressive enhancement. I doubt that any of your users or customers will complain about a missing animation if their browsers don't support it. To still use scroll-driven animations in unsupporting browsers, you could also rely on a polyfill, but disclaimer, I haven't used it because I think progressive enhancement does the job here. And if you're now as excited as I am about this new web feature and want to play around with it very quickly, let me show you how I start my demo projects and quick landing pages. I usually start in Figma and really quickly put something together. So here we have the design for the scroll-driven animations blog post and video. This is a responsive design. And if I now don't feel like writing all the CSS and HTML to get this off the ground because I actually want to check something else, I use the Builder Figma plugin. And you see it there already. There's a big blue button telling me to export to code. So let's hit this one. This now opens up a new window. And what do we got? Here we have a preview of my Figma design. And when I now hit here, develop, Builder will generate the resulting source code of this preview here right for me. So it's now doing its thing. We see that there's a navigation menu component, a header component. It's creating a whole bunch of CSS modules because I've decided to use CSS modules here. And this is now good to go. I can now check all the code and I can maybe give some additional instructions via chat. And then when I'm happy with the result, I can hit sim code and then I can pull in these components into my code base using this CLI command. It's honestly pretty sweet. And now we really made it to the end. If you want to copy some source code or want to read a blog post about all the things that I just showed you, you will find everything on the Builder blog. And with that, I'm done for today and I will see you in the next video.